brushing still worked. There was a small house in a poor quarter of the kingdom. Within this house dwelled a beautiful Cinderella and her two ugly stepsisters. The stepsisters forced Cinderella to do all the work. A post-modern urban apocalyptic fairy tale. One day, the ugly stepsisters were in high spirits because they were attending the ball at the palace that evening, where the prince would be choosing his bride. Meanwhile, they deemed poor Cinderella too common to attend. As the clock struck 6, the ugly stepsisters set out of the ball. Cinderella, however, sat by the stone crying into her handkerchief. All of a sudden, with a crack like a whip, an old fairy appeared in front of her. Croaked the fairy.
My two ugly sisters have gone off to the ball and left me here all alone to clean the soup from the stove.
Wailed Cinderella.
Well, I will have that sorted in an instant.
The fairy replied as she waved her magic wand. In an instant, Cinderella's rags transformed into a beautiful ball gown that shimmered like the stars, and an old pumpkin outside the door transformed into a beautiful carriage fit for a princess. Two vermin that had been about to gnaw at the pumpkin grew into perfectly white steeds that were harnessed to the front of the carriage. The fairy turned to the awestruck Cinderella and warned,
You must be back before midnight, or else everything will return to the way it was.
That is more than enough time to charm the prince.
Cinderella agreed, and off she went into the night. At the palace, everyone was intrigued when this strange girl arrived in a dress that shimmered like the stars. Cinderella wasted no time in getting